case.
Okay. All right. Well, here we are. Let's get this thing started. Hello, ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. It is me, Dukect T, with a special Dukect Lounge. And well, we have a very, very awesome guest here, ladies and gentlemen. Someone who is probably you know him from many videos, from his many rant videos, from his video game reviews to his recent political stuff that has been going all over the place. And let me tell you, man, it has been very, very interesting political stuff, which we'll probably get to later. But enough of my ranting. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only Razorfist.
Godspeed, everyone. I want to thank everyone for having me on.
No problem. No problem, man. There's a lot of things. Since this is a wrestling channel, you do dabble in wrestling and such.
A little bit.
Oh, God.
A little gentleman by the name of Vince Russo who is beloved the world over.
Well, some places he is, and most places I actually go into think he's, like he said in the new video series, the Antichrist of professional wrestling. Which,
oh man, you're telling me. I remember back in the day when I was on Spoonie's forums. Spoonie, the reviewer.
Oh yeah,
he had forums. I don't know if he still does or not, but back in the day, I was on there a lot, and I got into like a 5-alarm flame war on his forums. Just out of no, and I'm not a big flame war or forums guy. All I did was express the opinion that Vince Russo is blamed for a few more things than he actually fucking did. Right?
Oh yeah,
that was all I said. It was, I think people make him a scapegoat, and they downplay the good things that he did, which I think is pretty much true.
Oh yeah, I agree. He is there is the one thing I always like about Vince Russo, and people will chastise about me about this, is like, he gave people something to do. He gave everything something to do, because compared to now where everyone else is just there. Yeah. They just sit there and do nothing. I'm like, for whatever their worst sin, Vince Russo sins, and there's some good stuff. He did some bad stuff, but you know what? I will say this. He gets people, the wrestlers, something to do, because quite honestly, if you're just sitting there just saying, we're just going to have a match just because having a match.
Yeah. There's a lot of that going on. Just get in the ring and work. Oh, black tights, first name, last name. There's a lot of that horse shit going on.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And he's that. You're absolutely dead right on that. He, like, when you go back and watch those Attitude Era Raws, one of the things that hits you right between the eyes is like you're almost you could look forward just as much to watching what Al Snow was gonna do as to what The Rock was going to do, because you knew every single week Al Snow was going to have something to do. Every single week. There was always going to be some kind of storyline that was moving over. If you were a Gangrel fan, there was always going to be a match that Gangrel was involved in, or some kind of story. It was always going to be moving forward, and Gangrel never had a title ever. But that's the essence of like getting people. That's a good example of how when people say, well, wrestlers just need to get themselves over. I agree. They certainly have a part to play in that, but booking has a lot to do with that too.
Oh yeah.
If they have a lot to do, then it's easy to invest in them emotionally.
Oh yeah. That's the one thing that most people seem to forget is the lack of connection. And I would say this, like, for example, people might say what it is or what it not, but Zack Ryder, way back in 2010, he got himself over the videos and everything else. And to me, I'm like, yeah, he's not gonna be a world champion, but you know what? He got himself his name quality. He's got his name out there. They were chanting his name. During I remember Survivor Series and such. I was watching, and during The Rock speaking, The Rock was actually in the promo. They were chanting, "We want Ryder." I'm like, this dude got him. Like, he actually got that crowd the chance. And then what the WWE did to him afterwards, it felt like it was a bit of a punishment. Like, it got popular, but it was like, no, we don't want you to get too popular. They set these guys back. And other than his recent WrestleMania moment, his big claim to fame was him getting kicked in the nuts by Eve at WrestleMania. And then having when afterwards he loses the United States title, got basically beat down by Kane, and then rolled out like in a wheelchair, and then rolled that thing out of the stage, and then the most memorable thing about it, that wheelchair folded up and just went back red with him. I'm like, damn, that dude will never get popular like that ever again. I felt just. And
that seems to be a pattern, is just, and I think honestly, it's a really simplistic explanation, and there are many, many reasons why WWE is not as creatively fulfilling and doesn't have as deep of a roster. It's a very multifarious issue, but I'll say this. I think it does come back to Triple H a little bit.
Oh God, yes. It's
because ever since 2000, you can watch the difference between early 1999 and late 1999 is stark. At the beginning part of 99, you had Russo and Ferrara at the top of their game, and they're everyone's got a story, whatever. Russo and Ferrara leave, and you can almost mark it down to like the minute. You watch those episodes, and it is painful. How many times did you watch any of like the 2000?
Oh yeah, but the thing is, I did like some of the 2000 stuff because it felt like everyone had a purpose. But Triple H was getting
but I'm gonna get to that. I agree with you, but I'm gonna get to that. So, how many times watching over those episodes, it almost became a meme? If it had happened in the age of the internet. The modern age of the internet, anyways. The internet was around. Like in the age of broadband, the meme would have been Triple H's leather couch.
Yes,
every freaking week. It went from everyone having a story and they were involved in something, and it was a saga that was progressing naturally and instinctively from week to week, to everyone's gonna file into the back room, and Triple H and Stephanie are gonna be sitting on that skeegy leather couch. And they're going to tell them what their match is every single week. And it was painful.
And now, well, they evolved. Instead of that, you have Mick Foley and Stephanie stumbling and bumbling about their matches, which,
it's the same. Yeah, it's the same idea. And they also, it's interesting you mentioned Mick Foley, because later in 2000, when Mick Foley became the commissioner, they did the same freaking thing. They just replaced the leather couch with Mick Foley with the stupid puka shell necklace on.
Yeah, but yeah, it was again the authority figure, and that was the one thing they can't get off of.
No, they can't.
I mean, it is. I know, and it to me pisses me off because I am. I know you watch too, but I was a WCW guy. Always have been.
Hell yeah.
I always loved WCW. When it was, to me, 1997, 98 to me was like, it's my personal thing because to me it's like the perfect wrestling program. Is sports type. You look at the way they produced that show, Nitro. It was like compared to Raw, it was like legitimately night and day. It was like something professional, something that you can actually sit down and watch. I actually got my dad or anyone else watch it, and they said when I was a kid and everything and watch Nitro, they said I could actually see myself watching this, as it felt like some kind of a sports thing, like watching Monday Night Football or something like that. And you had these nice characters, everything else had a place. You had the cruiserweights, you had God, fuck WWE, they ruined the cruiserweights.
There was a lot of cold matches on WCW though.
Oh yeah, and
I'll say that there was a lot of that, and it's hilarious because WWE is still airing these specials about the death of WCW and all the different reasons why that company went out of business, like almost rubbing it in, and it's like, guys, how can you be producing these and talking about these mistakes and not recognize that you're making the same mistakes now?
I love this. I love it. 3-hour Raw. So yeah, it's not like WCW had 3-hour match. Oh wait, they did.
They did, and it's amazing too because Ed Ferrara, if you watch any of his interviews, or Vince Russo, if you watch any of his interviews, they talk about like coming on to WCW, and they came on at the tail end. The first thing they wanted to do was knock the 3rd hour off of Nitro.
And that was the smart thing right there. Because if they did not, and that's right here, the problem is it's like it's 3 hours. And not only that, the fact you have SmackDown, you have 205 Live, you have all these other minutia and such. It's like, I can't watch. It's too much. And the worst thing about it is the way the WCW they keep harping on it. It's just I saw the XFL documentary and stuff. They still kept that dick. Like Vince can't let that go. I'm like, dude, you won. So I feel like I'm like Van Jones that election. I'm like, hey, you won. It's over.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous sometimes how petty WWE. I mean, God. Why don't you ask China's moldering corpse how petty the WWE can be? You know, sorry, too soon, folks.
But, no, man. But it's real. I mean, to talk to Sting. That's the reason why he didn't want to go to WWE. And well,
he shouldn't have.
I don't know what. I mean, he was there. He cost the authority their power. Then the authority got it back for whatever reason, because Lord knows the WWE can't last a week. It was a month. 1 month, and then it came back. I'm like,
I love Sting. I think he's one of the greatest characters in the history of wrestling. He's over as fuck with me. I don't care what anyone says, but objectively, he got worked by Triple H. Straight up.
Fuck.
Triple H worked his ass. Oh, next year you'll get your win back. I don't know what he did backstage, and I understand like wanting to put over people or whatever, put over young talent. That I can understand. The stuff he did later, ironically, the stuff that got him injured and ended his career. Like that kind of stuff where he's putting over younger talent, I can completely understand that. He's a veteran, whatever. But working with Triple H, a guy who doesn't need it and who wasn't established by it. I mean, does anybody walk around going, oh, but Triple H is the guy who beat Sting? You know what I mean? No, Triple H is always going to be that guy who's on the second tier. He's, as Jim Cornette says, he's not the guy who makes money. He's the guy who works with the guy who makes money.
And it's even worse because if you look what he did to Roman Reigns about him, I mean, when he did the whole push of Roman Reigns, and people saw this, and I actually go to a forum I go to, but it's Freaking Awesome Network as such. Really good place, even though they actually do host my videos, so I have to say that. But but seriously, it's a nice place. So there's one forum member who actually said this is basically what he does this because he's at that big old ego he has. Is that type of like, I'll put you right there. And then next, he basically murked Roman Reigns, beat him down bloody, crowds cheering. And you know what he does? He does crowd cheering taunts. He does that whole mocking, this thing when the Roman does that cock in the fist, and then did the whole DX suck it. And I'm like, yep, got the crowd on him. I'm like, yeah, he just killed Roman. He just completely destroyed Roman Reigns right then and there. And their match, oh gosh.
Such a shame because Roman Reigns is a guy who's already got so much to freaking deal with. I mean, he's a guy, look, he's built like a brick shit house. He looks good. He's not the greatest worker in the world, but neither was Hulk Hogan. And he's better than Hogan in terms of his actual.
Yes, I think Roman Reigns is actually really good in the ring and such, but they did not do anything for him. And even worse, the same thing's going on with Seth Rollins now. First, he attacks him, takes out the title, give it to Kevin Owens. Which, oh goodness, Kevin Owens, the big, you know what? He is basically the Jonah Hill of the WWE, just this fan who am I wrong? Tell me I'm wrong. Because he's just been this dude who just makes jokes. And basically, that's what the fans say. Make their jokes. They do their moves, but people don't care. And yet Seth Rollins was just running around saying, I'm gonna burn it down, I'm gonna burn it straight down. Basically running around doing absolutely nothing. Then gets on the Survivor Series team, which I have no idea why he wants to be on the Raw team since he wants to burn down Monday Night Raw. I'm like, that makes no sense. And then
because there's no consistency of characterization because you got a team full of writers and one jagoff in the writing room and comes up with an idea 1 week and 3 weeks later, because there's a team of writers, another one has a different idea, and Stephanie, lacking any executive acumen at all, doesn't know how to combine those visions together to make a coherent whole. Look, that's the common denominator here. I hate to bash Stephanie here because I think she means well, but I don't think she's suited to be in the role that she's in. And unfortunately, because she's related to the boss, she's not leaving that role anytime soon. And now she's married to the guy who's probably going to succeed the boss, or she is going to succeed the boss, one or the other. Triple H and Stephanie are basically going to be a two-headed beast there after Vince McMahon goes away.
Mm-hmm.
So either way, she's not going anywhere, which is the worst. WWE is in the worst possible position from like a creative standpoint, because the very malady that is adversely affecting the product is the one thing that's not going to change and can never change.
That's the one thing. It's the frustrating part. And then next thing you know, you have Seth Rollins finally going to take over. What, it took you they screwed you in September. Yeah. And now you're doing this in like January, February. Like, wow.
Oh, and that's without talking about all the heel face turns every other freaking week. The guy's like a revolving door.
Oh yeah, and then even better is that him going to Stephanie, talking to her, which just great talking segments, and then basically just going so far. I'm going to go after you, and I'm going to go after your husband everywhere he goes. Then I might knock on your door and basically beat your husband down in front of your kids. How's that for? I'm like, dude, you just lost every bit of like good guy cred ever. And then Triple H comes out late in the night, basically said, I try to be the good guy. I try not to be the destroyer. Basically getting all this sympathy. And by the end of that promo, that big old promo, I'm like, people with the crowd who was supposed to boo the man were chanting Triple H, Triple H. And I'm just like, he did it again. He can't stop himself.
I will say, look, we can't just harp on the negative. I think there's some positive things too. And ironically, it's some of the stuff that people are pissed at the most. Like the Goldberg thing is actually.
Oh, I love him.
I think it's a brilliant build. Having him kick the shit out of Brock twice. Look, it's the first time Brock's been at anyone's mercy in several years. Brock has steamrolled so many people. He ceases to mean something after a while.
Yeah, and
you need to have
a challenge. And when I actually thought that match was pretty much great, and Goldberg seems has Lesnar's number, and then think there's going to probably build it up to a match at WrestleMania, be it for the Universal title or not. Which honestly, I hope it is. And at the end of it, I would say screw it, put Roman Reigns in there, since Roman Reigns does trend well over Kevin Owens. So have Roman Reigns defeat Goldberg and Lesnar one night. You get some of that big credibility. Turn him heel, turn him to a villain, whatever, fine. And also have him just destroy the Universal title belt for the heck of it and get a brand new one. Because
how about freaking Goldberg? He's in such good shape. It's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, I was like
if he had the same color beard as before, it would be 1999 all over again.
In 2000 and 2003. I mean, the dude looked really good. I'm like, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, and I just watched the XFL and all that debacle, and I'm like, I wonder what would happen if Vince actually just said, I'll keep that shelved, the XFL, for like another 2 years or whatever, and actually paid all those contracts, those big old contracts that Time Warner and everything else had, which I don't begrudge anyone, especially Hogan, who honestly, if you ever saw that contract, which was floating around, holy. I just
Christ.
I'm like, that's it. I'm like, if you want that, to me, that's like the ultimate deal. I'm like, I can't hate on that because I can't handle it. Same with Jack Nicholson with the Batman thing when he did back in 1989, got all that money from that movie, then the sequel, all of them. Like, I can't hate on that. Dude had just
you can't, and especially in a business like wrestling where it's innately by its very nature skewed toward the promoters.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean. So any one of the boys that can get themselves paid, that's good for everyone.
Oh yeah, and I sit there and I'm like, man, they could have got that stuff. But Goldberg, I think is one of the shining things in WWE right now. I honestly believe he is one, and that's sadly the old guys are over. But the one thing I want to talk about, other positive stuff, they also get young talent. Unfortunately, there's a lot of garbage around it. Like, for example, the cruiserweight division. I know what I hate about it, because they are trying so hard to do this whole separate thing, the separate but equal type of thing, which doesn't work. It wasn't even a part of WCW's cruiserweight division. In fact, it wasn't even in the WWE cruiserweight division before Hornswoggle came in and took the belt for whatever reason and just destroyed it. But it was like, you know what? They fought not so the cruiserweights, but also they were fighting against the, Eddie Guerrero was the United States champion at WCW. He was, you had Chris Jericho and his rise. All these other people were actually, they were little guys, but they were, still in that they could still fight in that heavyweight type of division.
Yeah, you had Ultimo Dragon.
Oh, yes.
Luchadors and all these incredible workers. You were able to bring in international stars, which is something WWE doesn't focus on much. If there's one thing that's fallen by the wayside in recent years, haven't been a lot of international stars. You get the occasional Japanese guy, and generally there's just the one on the roster at any given time. Or you get the occasional luchador star. I know they tried really hard with Del Rio, for example.
Del Rio, Sin Cara, Doe failed massively, and I'm like,
and it's a shame too because Sin Cara was a pretty good build. Like the way that they teased him coming in and the promos and everything. I mean, they really did. They sold this guy like he was going to be king shit. It's Sin Cara who shit the bed.
Gosh, yes.
The guy couldn't speak English. He wasn't ready.
And that was Triple H's big signing too. Yes, and he failed in the stupid mood lighting, and I love the fact that his the dude that was eventually replacing was actually better than him in pretty much in every type of way. Because I was like, dang. I mean, when you fail that spectacularly, that is amazing.
But that is a big thing. Like, if you were really going to put the pedal to the metal with the cruiserweight division, you could do that. You could have more of an international focus, which is part of WWE is always purporting that they're this big international conglomerate. And it's like, okay, fine, then be one. I do more than just cut a stupid promo at the top of that dumb tower in Dubai. Actually have some wrestlers that are from some of these countries.
And they're starting to do that. And I do like some of them. I mean, Jack Gallagher, to me, you've seen him, he's British as I don't know what. But, he has that type of, connection with the crowd. And I feel like, and it's sad, he shouldn't be in, I can't believe I'm saying that he shouldn't be in the cruiserweight division. Like, he's so good. In fact, I think even WWE realized that he was not only mixing with the main event stars, but actually was in the Royal Rumble. While Neville was actually, keeping the crowd asleep during his cruiserweight title match with Rich Swann, Jack Gallagher was getting the responses and actually going in the Royal Rumble. So what does that tell you? It's like if he goes into, I'm like, dude, if he goes to the cruise, that's like a step down, and that should not be the issue right there. And now also the one thing I do love, they are doing that with the UK tournament, and they're actually the WWE is doing that whole tournament style with UK tournaments. They're doing an Asian tournament, as I hear,
which is kind of cool, but it does remind me of I don't think it's a coincidence. The last time they really did all the tournaments and stuff overseas was 96, 97-ish, and how did the ratings look around that time?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
And even worse is that when they had the UK tour and they had a Facebook poll, and I don't know if you've seen this or not, is that the Facebook poll, they said if you, did you watch it, didn't watch, or what type of favorite matches, and you know what the majority of that thing was? Over 7,000 people responded to the poll, didn't watch. I'm like, damn. I feel like I was like the only few people watching. I know it was like
you can't. It really has to be a case where if you're gonna have a cruiserweight division, then look, nothing's gonna substitute for a feud. Nothing's gonna substitute for proper booking. Nothing's gonna substitute for actually having these characters matter. Even if you have a cruiserweight division ain't gonna work if you don't have storylines for all these people. And they don't have, it's just a bunch of cold matches and flipping and flopping. And it's great stuff, but ultimately it's only playing to the same audience that you're never going to lose. The people who watch indie shows, the hardcore wrestling fans, those people aren't going away.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny, the WWE is becoming more and more into a niche. They're becoming more niche. And that's my worst fear. And then you see what the audience is. And not only on the live shows, the live tours, which look like, oh my gosh, it's like there's no one there. SmackDown and Raw, they're like they felt like they had to put one side of the crowd is. You don't see in some cases they do pan out and you see the people there, but in more cases than not, you only see that one side, and they don't do the panels because it's like none but dark, like all of it, like they just shut out the power, damn.
Yeah, which doesn't explain. That's another thing. They say things like, well, ratings don't matter. Okay, well, I agree. Ratings are falling across the board because of streaming media and so forth, and WWE are cutting into their own product in that sense with the WWE Network. Okay, fine. On the face of it, that might be a viable excuse if live attendance wasn't down, which it is, and it has been for some time. Your house shows, oh my God, they're drawing a few hundred people, just over 1,000 a few times here to house shows for WWE. Those are like TNA numbers from 2010.
Oh yeah, and everyone was going on. Oh, TNA can't. I mean, last time they did a road show, TNA can't sell out Bound for Glory. And meanwhile, and you see what WWE house shows with AJ Styles, with he being the world champion, they're drawing I'm like, damn, I think even TNA house shows drew better.
Yeah.
and it's funny. And you speak of the network, and I honestly, I like the WWE network. There's some good programming there, some good, some not so good, and they keep pushing like Holy Foley, which I watched one episode and I said never again because I want to have brain cells left. I try. I really do. I give everything at least a chance. And it's like they try to have this fake drama, like saying, Noelle, whoever wants to be wrestler. She's like, oh, I'm not going to let you wrestle. Meanwhile, she's on WWE programming and doing an interview. I'm like, yeah, thank you. You know what? Fine. Keep doing this stupid reality show stuff. I just can't watch it, but my brain going crazy. And even still talking about the WWE network, it's like they get 1.5 million subscribers. And here's the real crazy thing about that. I look at the Vice Sports, this big Vice Sports article about the Breaking Cafe inside the WWE's Unlikely Empire. It's basically, they say, they say it's basically stagnant pretty much there. It's not moved up.
Yeah, that's another thing. And a fact, I read that article. The fact they don't mention, and I think it's important to mention, is, they're able to kind of keep the same number of subscribers or whatever. Although, for the record, weren't they originally supposed to hit like 2 million or something? They still haven't hit that number. But here's the thing. They only measure their subscribers annually right after WrestleMania.
Yep.
It's like, what do you think you're going to get in terms of totals then? It's right after WrestleMania. Everyone's going to order the network because if you get the network, then you get the pay-per-views for free, and everyone wants to see WrestleMania because it's the Super Bowl. So what, are you going to pay $60 to buy it on pay-per-view, or are you going to drop $10 on 1 month of the network
and then skip out and never hear again?
And I'm sorry, not drop $10 because you more often than not you get the free month.
Oh yeah.
So you just get the free month, and then they get to say, "Oh, we have 1.5 million subscribers," when really, probably annually, they're probably somewhere barely north of 1 million.
Oh yeah, and that's just that's adding into the international. I think the last time I checked, the U.S. thing is like 800,000 to 900,000 subscribers in the United States alone, which is nice, but it's like it hasn't moved. It stays there and it's stagnant. And and I sit here and I'm looking at this. You ever saw the show Lucha Underground? I love it.
Of course, yeah.
They actually are going to, if you hear the news, this probably is breaking news or someone who has heard it, is that they're going to be on Netflix in the next couple of weeks, the first and 2 seasons. And I'm like, yeah, they're going to probably have more people watching like the first 2 seasons of Lucha Underground with their huge install base in Netflix than anything in the WWE, because I truly think with the way they shoot those stuff in Lucha Underground, the way they shoot it, the way they tell their stories, where their matches matter, all the characters and wrestlers who are just they actually bring a reason to be there, not just doing wrestling moves. They actually have a reason to be there. They have storylines, and it's done in this whole telenovela type of hugely dramatized story. And you're like, man, I really like this stuff. Even if the show was like, it's a mediocre show, you still are like, hey, you know what? I like these characters. I like these characters. I want to see where they go into it. And the way they do it, the way that Lucha Underground, they portray everything is like, you know, it's like the next evolution, while WWE is just still spinning their reels and such. And I'm like,
well, I think they understand something that WWE doesn't seem to understand, and I think this is the Triple H influence too. Triple H is more of a worker guy. Look, Triple H throughout his career was able to adapt his persona to be a little more of an entertainer, but he was never. There's a reason Triple H never got to the Undertaker's level. There's a reason he never got to Rock's or Austin's level, because he didn't have that critical entertainer aspect to his character. Never really. He was always, you had to package him as the cerebral assassin, because you had to imagine that there were things going on in his head, because when he got on the mic, he was the drizzling shits.
Oh, I mean, God. Oh, Lord.
Have you ever seen Ivory's shoot interview from a few years ago?
No.
Where she's talking about how everybody in the backstage, when Triple H was making his ascent in like 2000 and 2001, they used to have like a backstage meme basically where they were like, "Oh, look, Triple H is in the ring talking. I think I'll go vacuum my apartment. Oh, I think I'll go do my laundry." Like, and this is people in the backstage. These are people working with him.
Oh God, yes, I remember those days, and I am a fan of Triple H. I'm, always liked him, but I'm sitting here, I'm like, oh my gosh, he keeps going. I just kept going and going, and especially. Yeah, 2003 was just worse at his being the world champion too. 20 to 40 minutes of him just going on and on, and I'm like,
yeah, and it was well, I mean, we all know it was a glory fest. I mean, I crunched the numbers. I forget what the final total was, but I crunched the numbers on just how many main events Triple H was in 2000 and how many of them he won. And it was like, it was something stupid. Like there was maybe one time that he didn't win in 2000. And every other time he was in a main event.
Exactly.
It was just solid year. And I get like you have to build the heel, but it was a bit much after a while, especially because you were stringing the audience along. This isn't about Triple H. It's not about The Rock. It's about the audience. You're stringing them along. They have to at some point feel like the good guy's going to triumph. And it was like every month Rock was going to bat against Triple H, and every month he was getting his ass kicked or he was getting screwed in some way. And then The Rock would go on Raw and he'd talk a bunch of trash and he'd get his wind back because The Rock's just, you know, he's good like that. But Triple H would wind up coming out victorious repeatedly. And so after a certain point, you stop taking The Rock that seriously. You were he's going to keep cutting funny promos, and that's entertaining and whatever, but whatever. That's why I always say, people say the Attitude Era ended after WrestleMania 17, and certainly the Austin heel turn didn't help. But honestly, it was like a year solid of the year 2000 was really a slow decline where it was just this kind of...
Yeah, it was the old school NWA. It was the old school NWA chase the heel type of stuff where he idolizes Ric Flair. That's what his thing was. It was always about that. And holy crap. It was like, Hunter, you need to stop watching NWA these old tapes. Stop it. And look at what's around. People don't want to see that. They like heroes. They like heroes beating the crap out of each other. You know, they like that comic book flick, the Avengers. You know, and Man of Steel.
Well, that's today. Like, I understand why they would go more realistic in 2000. We were still in the middle of the Attitude Era, but today you have to identify your market. I said this in one of my videos on Vince Russo's The Brand, but the main problem predominantly is that WWE has not identified and is not catering to their market.
Oh, God, yes.
Are stuck in between. If you look at the two most successful regimes of the Attitude Era, it was what? The Hogan era and the Attitude Era. Those are your two most successful periods in company history. They became a pop culture phenomenon during both of those periods. And if you look at it, they're two completely opposing marketing styles. In the late 80s, early 2000s, they said, hey, you little kids, we're going to cater to you, and we're going to do it so well that the adults are going to be interested just because the storytelling's so good. Same thing happened in the Attitude Era. Hey, you college-age guys and late teens dudes, like, we're going to go after you, but because it became so cool, the kids are automatically interested in what the adults are interested in.
Oh, yeah.
So
and
you
now,
wind up with the mass market appeal. That's why this approach of them trying to be all things to all people isn't working. J.R.R. Tolkien, famous quote, said, the most profound truths are found by being painstakingly specific. In other words, the more you concentrate on just one small facet of your audience and cater to them as well as possible, or a particular market, the more you narrow, the more broad your audience becomes. Because if it's good, then it's good, and everyone's going to be interested in it.
Oh, yeah. And then, you sit there, you wonder what's going on in the WE right now. It's like they're trying to be everything and nothing. And that's not just a video game, but the 007 video game, a James Bond video game back in the day. By the way, I still have that. It's actually pretty good. But before I get off the wrestling tangent and such, it's funny. It's that WE does try to be this everything, this huge amorphous blob, and my hope is that with either Triple H or someone else there, they'll maybe finally get like at least a direction. That is my hope, is that they have a direction. They'll say what are we?
Yeah. And I do agree. I think Vince McMahon is part of the problem. If you're going to go with Triple H or Stephanie, it's got to be one of them. I don't like the idea of them being a collaboration, because I think the best, if you look at it classically, again, you have to go back to the Hogan era and Attitude Era. Two most successful periods. During both of those eras, one creative vision was catered to. During the Hogan era, it was Pat Patterson. He was the booker. It was his vision. All that stuff is him. And Vince McMahon, of course, throwing, he's ultimately the final red stamp on the paper. But same thing was true of the Attitude Era. Attitude Era, it's Vince Russo, and with a little help from Ed Ferrara. He was kind of his assistant. And if you do that, you really need a central creative vision. Look, if that creative vision collapses and it sucks and it's not working, then you fire them and you get someone else. But that's the way it's got to work. It's got to be a dictatorship. It just plain has to, because it's the only way that everyone can wind up with a story. When you have 12 or 20 different opinions in a writer room, well, all 20 of those opinions have to dovetail into one before you can proceed from match to match, which begins to explain and ameliorate. It begins to delineate, rather, why a room full of writers somehow winds up with just two storylines on every single show every week.
It's a completely just, there's no other type of no straight pass, no type of like direction. Yeah. And speaking of things with no guys, let's get to video games right quick. A really good thing of no direction. Square Enix. Oh gosh. Talk about a company that just can't, who are just have no direction whatsoever, and delays, and with no type of structure whatsoever. Oh gosh. And I saw your video today actually about Marvel, and I honestly would say this about my first fear about when I said the whole Avengers thing was great, and then I saw Square Enix. I'm like, oh fuck. No, their reputation precedes. I'm like, I'm like, first off, why don't you finish the games you have on your plate before you get to the Marvel stuff? Why don't release Kingdom Hearts 3 instead of having Kingdom Hearts 2.616.5 remix? Fresh start, we have like
as I remember, Sony quote unquote won E3 a few years back with that Final Fantasy VII remake. Whatever happened to that, huh, folks? It's 2017. We haven't seen hide nor hair of that fucking thing.
Oh, wait. There was a poster where you had Sephiroth looking menacing.
That was a poster. So we have art. Wait a minute. As I seem to remember in 2006, at E3 2006, when they revealed the fucking PS3, they had a tech demo that had Final Fantasy VII in it. It seems like we saw more gameplay in that snippet than we have seen of the actual Final Fantasy VII remake that is reputedly being developed. And that was just a tech demo.
Oh, that is beautiful. It is. And then I'm like, and don't get me started the Kingdom Hearts franchise, which seems to be stuck in this limbo. And you have all these talented people who honestly have probably
Didn't you
died.
Final Fantasy 15? That was the best Kingdom Hearts game I've ever played.
And even, and yeah, again, Kingdom Hearts and, Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy 15, which started out as Final Fantasy 13 Versus, which, yeah, I'm not into the Final Fantasy series because I tried playing 12.
Which Final Fantasy 13 versus a Gito 13, like what kind of like half brain dead name generator is locked and chained to a fucking pipe in the basement at Square Enix HQ exactly? A Gito 13? What does that even mean? What does a Gito mean? Is there even like Infinite Undiscovery? This is the company that came up with the name Infinite Undiscovery and said, "Brilliant, cut, print, we're gold."
Then again, this is the same company who thought that having a main character that has no interest in the plot, and they sell it. I'm like, that's Final Fantasy 12 in a nutshell. I'm wait a minute, hold on. Let's just sit back here and let's all look at this. I'm like, how do you do that?
It's such a shame to do that. You have a talented studio like Eidos Montreal, who, they made Deus Ex Human Revolution, which was the best game I had played in years. Deus Ex Mankind Divided, which is the best game I've played since then.
Oh yeah, I actually because of that video, I actually bought the special edition and such on my 360. In fact, I think I got it on Steam too. So thanks for that, by the way. But
it's good shit, man. It's really
it is.
It's a talented developer that has been so wholly and unerringly subjugated by their parent entity that, their boundless creativity cannot overcome the micromanagement. I mean, look, the warning signs were here it really was with Thief, the 2014 Thief 4 reboot, whatever the fuck.
Yeah, if you mean with B4 with the thing, the same thing with the Driver 3. I saw that. I was like, nope. I already saw this with Driver 3. I'm not going to jump into that road again.
But yeah, it was really, the micromanagement was really apparent there. It was so intense, the micromanagement on that game specifically, that the guy who championed Eidos Montreal to begin with, the guy who founded the studio, Stefan Dastus, I believe is his name. He wound up quitting the company right before the end of development on Thief 4. He was so disgusted with Square Enix, and they were butting heads so much. It's just so apparent. The Japanese and particularly the European branch of Square Enix. I don't know why the European branch of Square Enix, which has yet to develop fuck all of consequence compared to Eidos Montreal, why they have so much influence over the day-to-day at Square Enix, but for some reason they goddamn do. I again, no fucking clue why, but apparently throughout the development of Mankind Divided, throughout the development, you can see it in the final product of Thief 4, they were just dragging their crank across the face of, Stefan Dastus, and once he quit, they dragged their crank across, JBB and all the fucking people who were making Deus Ex Mankind Divided and just interfered on every level. That the game wound up still being brilliant, and in my opinion, it's my game of the year for 2016, is a tribute to Eidos Montreal.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, gosh. Now the people are saying, oh, just praise the Witcher series. No, I'm not going to do that. I don't want Razor to get kissed off at me. I don't, because I got these new headphones. I don't want my ears to bleed. All right. So,
well, I mean, let's compare. Okay. There was actually a whole fucking thing that I cut out of my video just because I was fucking tired of hearing people bitch about how I was mentioning The Witcher. I know, it's a baffling fucking concept comparing Deus Ex Mankind Divided to the game that it is most routinely fucking compared to unfavorably in the video gaming press, The Witcher 3. I know, what a loony fucking concept. Why would I ever goddamn do that? But like, you compare the two, like the whole point of that, of showing that dialogue sequence that I showed in that video, where it's a Casey sequence where, you know, you have all these paths within the conversation and you actually have to take into account your Casey aug is showing you like a personality profile.
It was in the previous game as well. So yes, I have no idea why people...
In the previous game, and they fleshed it out even more in Mankind Divided. There's even more input, which is crazy. They actually fleshed that out. It's one of the most incredible dialogue systems I've ever seen in a game. And the best of all, you have the little wheel that gives you the responses, and when you highlight them, it actually tells you what it says. What you're going to say, word for word, absolutely verbatim, which is so rare in modern gaming. You know, you'll have a response, and it'll... like the height of absurdity is in Mass Effect. There's a couple dialogue choices where you'll have the dialogue wheel and it'll say like, yes, and yes, no, and go fuck yourself, right? And you'll say no, and then it'll say, go fuck yourself. You know what I mean? Like, it'll say another dialogue option that's already right there, but it's a summary, right? The little summaries don't tell you what you're actually going to say. But in Mankind Divided, they flat out tell you in the exact verbiage. But like, it's not even that. It's the depth. I get so tired of hearing the game has no content or the game's too fucking short. Yeah, Mankind Divided is too short, you know, and it's like, I spent hours upon hours in this fucking... I spent way longer on Mankind Divided than I did on Human Revolution. I finished Human Revolution in like 3-4 days. Mankind Divided I was at for well over a week and a half. Like it was, and I was going at it pretty hard, hours upon hours every single night. But the whole bit that I cut out of the review of the Mankind Divided rant was comparing objectively, point by point, choice by choice, a side quest in The Witcher 3, The Wild Hunt. I captured footage. It was in the video, and I was like, you know what? People are going to be pissed because it's more fucking Witcher shit, which is ridiculous because why would you not compare Deus Ex Mankind Divided to the game that people like Angry Joe and Jim Sterling are unfavorably fucking comparing it to?
Oh, and you know what I love?
Okay, let's momentarily compare that sequence to the Game of the Year all years, Witcher 3. So there's this mission in Witcher 3 where you meet up with this blonde sorceress chick. Kira Metz. So Geralt gets a vaginal invite from the blonde thunder twat in question. You can decide to go, or you can blow the bitch off. There's your first choice. Once you're there, you more or less go from A to B to C-U-N-T. You can decide to boink the broad, or you can go on your mopey way. If you let your dick sneeze on her at the end, there's another short ABC quest with a minor choice at the end. And then, without imbibing in spoilers here, you get to make a choice that will or will not piss her off tremendously at the end of the side quest, with a couple minor variations in tone thereof. Basically, you get to decide whether or not you call her a cunt while you decide the thing the game has decided you're going to do, basically. After which, you can decide to let her saunter into the night or tell her to go back to your snatchler pad and keep her stench trench moist until you get back. Like, that's roughly, when you break that down, that's roughly 3, maybe 4 choices in that side quest, only 2 of which carry any real significance whatsoever. And not bashing, believe it or not, I'm not bashing The Witcher 3 for that. That's certainly more depth than the average game, and it roundhouse kicks the living shit out of a Skyrim fetch quest, but it's also a bit of an outlier in a Witcher game that boasts more than a few, you know, fetch the frying pan, go collect 3 of this herb quests of its very own. But then you compare that to the video that I showed in my rant. In that side quest, for Christ's sake, you can sneak around the back one of 3 different ways, all of which require different skills to do so.
Oh, yeah.
All of that affects how enemies are going to react to you once you enter there. whether or not there'll be enemies at all. And then there's that entire fully fleshed dialogue sequence on top. You don't even have to touch. The best part about that dialogue sequence that I showed in my video, you don't even have to touch it. You don't have to go anywhere near the guy. You can go around the back and you can hack a keypad. You can go around the other side. You can sneak in. I mean, there's just so many different routes to go in through there. And that's just one side quest. And more than that, it's one portion of one side quest. After you get that calibrator, there's a whole other, I think there's 2 more parts to that side quest after that. Which blows my fucking mind. That is, I'm sorry, Witcher fanboys, that objectively has more choices, more variation. In raw numerical terms, I actually crunched the numbers and I presented that data in the video. Frankly, I wish I left it in, because either way, Witcher fanboys are going to bitch. I should have left it into the video.
Oh, but you know what? I see this. I'm like, this game got best RPG, but yet something like, say, Xenoblade Chronicles X, which I played, I think is really great. It was great. Yeah. And I'm like, this DLC, and I'm not going past DLC, but this DLC, Xenoblade Chronicles X, which actually has all of this stuff, feels like a next-gen game, much more than anything that Witcher 3 and everything else has, developed by Monosoft, which are doing the Breath of the Wild, which I know they know what they're doing with that. And I'm like, wait a minute. Why is this getting over something that actually feels like, actually an RPG game? And I'm not into that type of RPG stuff, but they know what they're doing up there. And I'm like, is this what they're rewarding this? But then again, it's the Game Awards when you have a huge giant talking, shaving, like a shaver and everything.
a giant Gillette razor giving people fucking fighting game advice. No, I agree. It's ridiculous. And look, Witcher 2, if it's your thing, that's fine. Or Witcher 3, rather. If it's your thing, that's fine. I can understand it has its merits. My main gripes with Witcher 3 are just how slowly the plot unfurls. It's such a slow game. It's not till like 7 hours into this fucking game that you're provided with anything resembling a reason to give a fuck about the plot.
Oh, gosh.
And then the combat is a little janky, which is true of all the Witcher games.
Oh, yeah, and I haven't played them, but I'll probably get to it eventually if I have the time. But one thing, let's get back to the main punching bag, Square Enix. Let's see. What are the things that really piss me off about Square Enix? Let's see. One thing. Oh, yes, the Final Fantasy.
Was it the cup noodles quest in Final Fantasy 15? The product placement, my friend?
God damn. I haven't played it, but I saw videos. I'm like, wow.
Oh my God. I'm just sitting here in my foldable Coleman recliner eating my cup noodles. Yeah, and I'm about to go head into my Audi R8 to go hunt some enemies, and while talking to my girlfriend on my Samsung Galaxy S. You know what I mean? Like, such ridiculous. I've never seen more ham-fisted product placement in a game.
I mean, I never seen something like this. Like, it felt like it was like watching like Wayne's World, like when they're doing the whole product thing.
Yeah,
like,
you're not lying, dude. You are not lying.
Exactly. It's like, okay, oh gosh, yes, it is a choice of generation drinking their Pepsi. I'm like, they need to put that. You gotta put that in their review, man, when you do it. But also the boy band look, which is hilarious too. Which I thought they were gonna do like some type of weird dance, like or something like that, because it felt like it was like something right out of the '90s, looking like a broke ass 98 Degrees.
Oh my God.
And I haven't played it. It might be fun. I know people who like it, so good for them. But I sit there. Then again, I'm actually worried because I actually have played those games. I played Final Fantasy 12 and I hated it. And then I hear about Final Fantasy, the MMOs, which, oh gosh, I mean Final Fantasy 14, which is better now, but the way it was launched.
Oh God, it's so ridiculous. You're gonna shelve Deus Ex Mankind Divided, which is sold well north of 1 million copies. Fuck, if I had to guess, probably well north of 2-3 million at this point. We don't know exact numbers because video game companies, unlike any other publicly traded company on God's green earth, apparently don't have to divulge their sales figures, even though they have fucking shareholders and shit. But whatever. But yeah, like, you're going to shelve Deus Ex Mankind Divided. You're going to shelve Deus Ex because Mankind Divided, quote unquote, underperformed, which God knows what the fuck that means. But Final Fantasy XIV can bomb. Like, thermonuclear warhead bomb to the extent that you have to literally rebuild the game again. And MMORPGs are easily the most expensive kind of video games to produce.
And they had to do an apology.
They had an official apology, and they wasted hundreds of millions rebuilding that game. You build a game like that twice, you're well into $200-300 million territory in terms of cost.
But then again, this is the same company that basically had that huge. They killed off their own movie studio after what, one film? Spirits Within, which looked beautiful but had no point to exist.
No point. And they tacked Final Fantasy onto it just to sell it because it was right after, all the successful Final Fantasy games had come out.
Oh, yes. And I'm like, and I love the fact in the DVD they actually here's Final Fantasy X. I'm like, because it looked so much, because it's funny because Final Fantasy Spirits Within has little to no references to Final Fantasy, other than I think they have Sid somewhere in there. And it's like, wait, don't you realize that this is something that people like about this series? High fantasy, going to do all this. Instead, we're just on Earth talking about Gaia and aliens, ghosts that may or may not want to kill people. What? But then maybe this was a call sign. The early stages with the rot that was the Final Fantasy franchise. When you had Final Fantasy X. Titus's story, aka should be Yuna's story, because pretty much that's what it is. So it's so much Titus with his fake ass laugh, ha ha ha. Then you have Final Fantasy 12, the main character has no point, and then Final Fantasy 13, which the completely on rails RPG, and it's still sold. I'm like, I did have someone I felt like,
which is ironic. Like, I think for a while there, they were just playing. And I think the only reason games like 12 sold, which 12 was a slight step in the right direction, at least it was more open. But like, I think the reason games like 10, which I'm sorry, it won all kinds of awards. 10 was dog shit. 10 was absolute trash. And you watch Spoonie's reviews on 10. Just boom, there you go. That's everything wrong with Final Fantasy X right there. He's an absolute genius at that, and I think he knocked that one out of the park in particular. But like 13, even 14, 10, 10-2, these are games that you could only recommend. Even like 13-2 and 13-3. These are games you could only really recommend to hardcore Final Fantasy fans, right?
Yeah.
Ironically, I think Final Fantasy 15 is kind of the opposite situation.
Oh, yeah.
What I've played of it, Final Fantasy to me. Well, shit, I played the whole goddamn thing because I'm about to drop a review of it in a few days here. But the fucking game, honestly, more than anything, it just feels like Japan trying to make a Western RPG, trying to make their own kind of Skyrim idea, except in sort of a modern world or whatever. It's clear they were looking at Western RPGs when they made this game. They were playing games like Red Dead Redemption. They were playing games like Skyrim. They were playing, they're playing Witcher or whatever. These are the games they were looking at. So it's weird. I went from 13-3 is kind of dog shit, but I would recommend it to Final Fantasy fans, to like, I would recommend 15 to anybody but hardcore Final Fantasy fans. If you just like open world RPGs, like, go for it. You might dig it.
That's hilarious that you're like, okay, this is for everybody, but you look at the Final Fantasy. No, it's not for you. Just go back.
It's bizarre. It's absolutely bizarre.
And it's actually funny about Final Fantasy, the series, is that there's so much potential, and I still see it. Even in films, I'm like, I haven't played Final Fantasy 3 or 6, whatever you call it. To me, I think that could be like a franchise, a film, or something like that. Final Fantasy 4, I think, with Terra and all those interesting characters. I think that could be a really good movie if they really put their mind to it, or a TV series, which everything else is.
I was more interested in Final Fantasy when it was a little more medieval.
Oh
It's
yeah.
once they started adding in all the steampunk and then they went kind of into cyberpunk with FF7 and stuff like that. It was cool at the time because not a lot of people were doing it. Now, I think it's gotten a little tired. I think we're to the point where you play 15 and you feel like you're just walking around Nevada, right? There's gas stations and shit. There's like normal, like mechanic shops and fucking. You go into an auto parts store, like what the is this Final Fantasy? That's what I mean.
Wait, there's a chocobo. You can ride chocobos. So
well, okay. There's chocobos in Southern California. You know what I mean? Like you're just in Southern California. You're just wandering around in the deserts of fucking the nebulous Nevada, Utah, Southern California kind of area. That's what it feels like topographically, which is weird. It does not, like I said, it doesn't feel Final Fantasy. Particularly.
Oh, yes. And,
but then there's a griffin, you know.
Exactly, random boss monsters, which is, you probably have, when you ride your motorcycle, you just see just some random big old monster just riding around and such. It's like, it's just average Thursday in Arizona, just ride it back around,
as you do.
And another game company to me that really is, you want to go and I would say something before I go. I have to say this about the Avengers type stuff about Square Enix. I hope they are not going to be doing something like what the movie franchises are, because the only thing I only watch is just that they're just continuously with just the oversaturation. Right, that's my fear. Is that even there's some really good stuff. I mean, people are gonna look at the Marvel brand like, because there's some good stuff. I mean, you had Daredevil series, which is finally getting a DVD release.
Yeah,
awesome.
And it's got the Blu-ray came out and it's bare bones as fuck. There is nothing on this Blu-ray. There is not one special feature. It's just, here's the episodes. Fine. Will you shut up now about the Daredevil DVD? God damn it. Literally, it just feels like that. They didn't do any behind-the-scenes featurettes. They didn't do one goddamn interview. No commentary. Nothing.
Which sucks. Shoot, I could guarantee you, look at all the other CW or anything other shows.
Talk about being fucking tone deaf. You got an audience that are primarily comic geeks. These are obsessive types. They want to know everything about the series that was made. Right? They want to know what graphic novels they were pulling their inspiration from. They want to know what comics the cast members were reading, what they were thinking about this particular episode, what their philosophy was, right? These are the kind of questions that are evoked when you show an obsessive nerd a show like fucking Daredevil or Jessica Jones or whatever. But instead, it's just, here's the goddamn episodes. Way to go.
Okay, we'll just download the episodes on the disc. Here you go. Fine, whatever.
No shit. And some of us filthy pirates, already did that. So,
and Netflix actually, you can do that now. You can download the stuff on your cell phone and tablet or whatever. You can actually watch, which is good. And I saw actually the new stuff, the new TV series, which looks interesting with Iron Fist. Even though some of the fight choreography is a bit off. I saw the one with I can't remember the name. It was her fighting in a cage fight, taking on two dudes. It felt like, I was like, man,
if you're gonna make an Iron Fist show, it's got to be like that. What's that AMC show? Into the Badlands. It's got to be it's got to just be Kung Fu: The Legend Continues, right? It's got to be that. Just a bunch of fights and, the occasional superhero drama, but just mostly a badass martial arts show with lots and lots of cool, like, holy fuck moments.
Oh, yeah, and I'm hopefully they're leaning into that with his power, just basically to break everything else. The character of Iron Fist is a product of the 70s martial arts movie boom, right? Mm-hmm. That's where that character and like Shang-Chi, the Hands of Kung Fu, and all those kind of comics come from. Oh, yeah.
Which it would be cool, by the way, to see Shang-Chi in an Iron Fist show. That'd be badass as fuck.
And also, you have Luke Cage, which was blaxploitation, which I watch at least some of them. They're fun to watch. It's that type of old school type of like films that they just don't care about. I honestly, and I love the series. I do, even though it went a bit off the deep end when in the middle of the series trying to have that main villain and such. I love Cottonmouth. I love Cottonmouth. I thought he was great.
Of the available Netflix shows, I think Luke Cage is far and away the weakest.
Yeah, but then again, I would take Luke Cage than most of the stuff on TV right now. What does that tell you?
It's true. Well, it tells you that they've kept the quality relatively high on the Netflix shows. Even Luke Cage is very much watchable. I honestly think these shows, in a way, are hurt by the binging phenomenon a little bit. Like, if you were watching these shows on a week-to-week basis, I think they would almost be better received than they are. Because, like, Daredevil Season 2 is a really good example. Everyone was whining about, there's all this kung fu and ninjas.
Wait, have you not read a Daredevil book?
I know, no shit. But it's like, but not only that, but like, I think if you were watching that on a weekly basis, instead of binging episode after episode, and it gets to the point where it's like, oh, look, the 5th ninja fight. I think if you weren't binging, that would be easier to digest personally, if you were watching it on a weekly basis instead. Just my personal opinion.
Yeah, but then again, I still think Daredevil was a lot. Daredevil Season 2 was good. I like the character who played Elektra much better than I actually have the movie here. That gosh,
oh no, not Jennifer Garner.
Oh gosh, I actually didn't mind 2003 version of Daredevil. It's decent, but oh gosh, the sequel, the sort of sequel in 2005. Oh god, no.
I have a story to tell you about the Elektra spin-off movie. So I'm working at a record store when that movie comes out. And the record store that I worked at was right next door to a movie theater. And so I'm driving to work one day. In order to get to work, you had to pass the movie theater. So I'm driving along, I'm getting ready to pull into work, and I see on the marquee outside of the movie theater, Elektra. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm a Daredevil fan. I better watch this movie. And it had just come out because I just noticed it on the marquee, right? I would have seen it otherwise. It says Elektra in theaters now. Pull into work. We're unboxing like new advertisements and stuff. Poster for Elektra on DVD. Already, the movie just got in theaters. That's how shit that movie was.
Oh god! And there was it. You know what the worst thing about it is? It's a little bit of a factoid. I actually did it in my review. Actually, it's cheap plug, but you had Stone. The character Stone was played by Bob Sapp, who, believe it or not, was one of the few Americans who actually won the IWGP Championship, but also won the only black wrestler to actually hold that belt. And you know how long he's in the movie? About like 5 minutes before he gets squashed.
He's about as long as Stick is.
Yes. And I'm like, Stick is one of the most important characters in the entire Daredevil mythos. He's not mentioned in the first movie.
Oh, so stupid that they cut him out.
And he's barely in there now. I'm like,
that would be my main gripe, by the way, about the Daredevil movie was suddenly this kid just knows he's a fucking ninja out of nowhere. And you're like, what? He's doing slow-mo backflip kicks and shit out of nowhere. He's a freaking 10-year-old kid. Out of nowhere, he just knows these things because he's blind and he has powers. That's the dumbest part of that movie by far. Way dumber than the playground fight, in my opinion, which is stupid. But, way stupider than that.
Oh, yes. And it is, oh, gosh. And I'm just like, why did they just kick out? They used him in the animated series of Spider-Man and such. He was that influential, and yet that's like having a Ninja Turtles movie without Splinter.
Yeah. And he totally stole the show on the Netflix TV.
Yes. Oh, yes. He is.
It was amazing in season 1 and 2.
Oh, yes. And props to the dude who played him. He really did.
Dude, he's in it. You know that dude is like 70 years old.
Yeah, and he really does feel like he's actually Stick. And I know he's going to be in the Defenders series too, which is going to be fun. And
Scott Glenn, he's in great shape. Like he's a big buff, like survivalist mountain dude in real life. He goes out into the wilderness and shit. The guy's a nut, but he's the perfect person to play Stick. Like he just is Stick.
Oh yeah, that's the dude. That type of great casting, and I gotta give props to that. And honestly, it's a lot better than the other TV show Marvel's offering, Agents of Shield, which has gotten better. But oh gosh, this show has it just. I don't know if it's canon or not with the movies or anything else. It's like they just cut that thing off. Like, it's shit. We're gonna cut that off right now. Wait with y'all. It's like they have all this earth-shattering stuff on the show. I'm like, with all this crazy stuff, where like Tony Stark and Avengers and stuff like that. And by the way, I love how that Phil Coulson, who is supposedly dead, is still walking around, just like doing. I'm like, can't put a mask on, something. And I'm like, did no one look upon this stuff? I'm like, seriously? And even with that huge data dump with, the Avengers, of Civil War and everything, don't you think they would have figured out, like, oh, crap, Phil is alive? Don't you think that would have been that way? I think they would have done something, but nope. We're just going to keep him doing his stuff. And he's the, semi-person who runs S.H.I.E.L.D. and such,
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Nick Fury, Sam Jackson's chilling somewhere.
Somewhere.
I think he's in Canada or something, but
he's getting some snakes off a plane or something. I don't know.
Oh gosh, and it's even just I'm just so screwed up about how they screwed up Agents of Shield. They've gotten better with it, but it's just that it's a show that has no real point to it, and I'm like, man, if they actually if they actually did something, because now they're actually going to do an Inhuman show, which they were trying to do, like they're making a movie about, but they can't. Yeah. And now, I think they're trying to do something because I think Legion is supposed to come out tonight on FX. So maybe Marvel is trying to get mutants back into it in their show with their universe, which pretty much was said the Inhumans, which they were building up to.
What a weird character to make a show about, though.
Oh,
it's funny. People think this is some new dude. No, Legion's a character. He's been in X-Men for a long fucking time. He was in fucking one of the X Factor comics I got when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. Yeah, now they're making a show about him. Marvel's scraping the bottom of the barrel with the fucking characters they're putting movies and shit. I mean, we just got an Ant-Man movie, for Christ's sake. I think we have officially hit saturation point, ladies and gentlemen.
And yet DC can't make a movie with anyone else but yet Batman and stuff.
Which, by the way, brings us back to our original Square Enix topic. Talk about jumping on a fucking bandwagon just in time for it to fucking catch on fire. Square Enix is jumping on the Marvel thing just in time for people to be getting sick of superhero movies.
Oh, yes. They always jump. And then again, this is the same company. I think it was Tetsu Natsumura who wanted, after seeing Les Mis, wanted to actually make the Final Fantasy 15 into a musical.
I saw that. I actually talked about that in my Final Fantasy 15 rant.
And I'm like, they do look like boy band. I'm like, maybe he got to that point that someone said no.
No, I'm pretty sure that's where the boy band idea comes from.
Oh gosh! Now I'm just imagining them trying to sing like a really bad version of "This I Promise You" from NSYNC. Now I'm like,
I know my calculus.
Oh, together. Yeah. Oh, but yeah, the Marvel superheroes and such, and now and then DC, which I feel bad for everyone hating on Batman v Superman, and I think it was a good movie. I didn't think it was the worst thing ever, which everyone.
I do. I think it was the worst movie ever. It was pretty ass. It was a great big steaming plate of ass. Actually, when the ending of your movie begins an hour before it actually fucking ends, I think you've got some pacing issues.
Yeah, the pacing was bad, but I would say this: the director's cut is better because it streams better. It seems like there's actually
it streams better, but it actually makes the slow pacing even worse.
Yeah, and I honestly, if I would do anything, I would actually, if I was the person behind Warner Brothers and Deets, I would say, first off, okay, Man of Steel, people like that. It's okay, but we'll get a sequel to Man of Steel. We'll have Batman do something or other, be like Nick Fury or something like that. Something like that. Get these superheroes together and then do a Justice League situation because Batman.
that really is the problem I think that WB is running into. Everyone wants to talk about, the dark tone and the movies are incoherent and they feel cobbled together. I think the fundamental problem is they're doing it in reverse. Marvel had the right idea fundamentally when they were like, okay, here's Captain America. Okay, here's Thor. Here's all these characters. We're going to introduce them first. Then we're going to put them in the Avengers. Because you have to give a shit first. Instead, DC did it absolutely in reverse. Yes, they made Man of Steel, but that movie by itself was not. It was liked. It was not loved, and that movie was not enough of a jumping off point for an entire fucking team up series.
Yeah,
so you wound up in this weird situation where you have Batman v Superman first. And so you're doing the team up first before you've introduced everyone. And so you wound up with that awkward sequence where they're showing Aquaman on the monitors and they're showing the Flash and they're showing all these characters. They're like, hey guys, look, it's the Justice League.
But then again, I probably would have liked that a little more if they actually built up to Batman v Superman. Because, as much as I like those, I would like them to be friends and everything, they do have that whole opposing type of ways and such.
What I think the fundamental problem is, I agree with you. I think they should have made a sequel to Man of Steel. And then had Batman be in it and have kind of an overshadowing, or rather a foreshadowing of, hey, there's this vigilante over in Gotham and Superman doesn't really agree with them and whatever. And then kind of at the end of that movie tease that like, this Batman fuck's going to have to be dealt with.
Oh, yeah. Then I like Ben Affleck's portrayal because he looks like a dude who was like, man, I'm done with this.
No, I was one of the few people who predicted outright Batfleck is going to be good. And I was right. He was good. He was actually really good.
I was wrong on him. I was wrong. I would admit that. I was like, oh, man.
People don't understand how big of a Batman fan Ben Affleck actually is. Like, he built a bat cave under his mansion. I'm not even shitting you.
Damn.
He's fucking huge into Batman. So when I heard that he was going to be Batman, I'm like, oh, shit, this is going to get real. He's going to be good. But he was fantastic. I thought he was great.
Yeah, and because he does get that old. I mean, he feels like that whole depressive Bruce Wayne. Like, man, I'm done with this shit. Like, he felt that was that whole tone in the movie, and I got that. But it just again, I do enjoy the film. I do, and it's just man, I wish I could have liked it more. I could have liked it more, but yeah, I do see the problems, but I still think it was still enjoyable. Then again, you had Suicide Squad, which was going to be dark, but WB just said, screw it, we're going to go with the Guardians of the Galaxy, try to be hip and edgy with a cool soundtrack, which I didn't mind. I liked the soundtrack, but yeah, it's so totally all over the place. And then you have Wonder Woman, which is the DC's last chance. It's their last hope, which I hear is actually pretty decent. So, I hear mixed stuff, but I'm hopeful that it's going to be good. The trailers make it look like it's actually going to be fun and actually look something deserved to be Wonder Woman, which is pretty much in World War One. They've got Wonder Woman can't be shit because if it is shit, the DC are never going to hear the end of it. Like, with Batman v Superman and with Suicide Squad, for some reason, DC have gotten very good at making movies that are shit, but they're just good enough that the fanboys will be able to defend them to the death. But if Wonder Woman fails, because this is their first, this would hurt them. And by the way, I'm surprised that EA, the evil overlords of video gaming, did not actually ask like Warner Brothers to say, hey, you know what? Why don't we have a DLC with them in Battlefield 1 and such? That would make money. I mean, come on. You see Wonder Woman charging over trenches with, which by the way, they're not in Battlefield 1, which is depressing. And you have her just take down like all the gunfire and such. That would make so much money. I'm not kidding you.
It'd be about as historically accurate as a huge chunk of the game, but
oh yes, it would be. But you know what? Screw it. It would actually be fun, and such. Which I'm surprised it hasn't been a Wonder Woman game yet, which is depressing.
I mean, she's a character who I've talked about Wonder Woman before. She's a character that I think DC frankly have hurt their own character, because they have this thing where I don't know if you've ever read any of the Wonder Woman comics, but the consistent malady with Wonder Woman is you're always kicking off good comic book writers from the book just so you can have some celebrity motherfucker who is really just a dilettante, doesn't really care about comics, but they have a name. And so it's like, hey, let's go get this TV writer. And usually it's someone who's like gay or like a gay rights activist. Like Alan Heinberg is a good example. He's like a prominent kind of gay rights activist / TV writer. He wrote Gilmore Girls and some other shit. And they went and got him, put him on Wonder Woman. And what happens? Well, he's a TV writer. He's busy as fuck. So the book starts getting delayed, and sure enough, within like 7 issues, Alan Heinberg's gone, and they have to go back. Oh, okay, shit, maybe we should have hired a comic book writer to begin with. And then that happens. Then they're like, well, shit, you know what? We need another headline grab. Let's go get prominent female. Let's just go get like Gail Simone or something. And then Gail Simone winds up leaving. It's this constant cycle of no one can really get any traction on the book, because they're constantly grabbing celebrities for just basically a headline grab is all it is.
You know, the best headline grab would probably be a good story. Like, hey, this is actually really good. Instead of having these characters, just to like say, well, you know, with Nick Spencer and Captain America, which, you know.
And the unfortunate side effect of that is you can never really establish a lore for Wonder Woman. Yeah, you have Themyscira,
whatever, the island of the Amazon.
Heebie-jeebies, whatever the fuck it's called. You have the island of Heebie-jeebies. You have some of her world has been established. There is a certain mythology there, but it's constantly changing because they're constantly getting these celebrity writers who come in that are like, oh, I'm going to reinvent Wonder Woman. And this happens every 5 goddamn years. And so because you're constantly wiping the slate clean and reestablishing Wonder Woman, she never really gets, there's no established version of Wonder Woman. There's no Wonder Woman year 1. There's no, the Dark Knight Returns for Wonder Woman.
Yeah, that's. I mean, heck. I mean, shoot. That no All-Star Superman version of Wonder Woman. A celebration of what her not only her tropes but
there's
her
good
stories.
Yeah. There's good graphic novels. I would recommend a graphic novel called Wonder Woman: The Hikatea to anyone out there who wants to read a really good Wonder Woman story. It's based on a Greek tragedy. But there's great Wonder Woman individual stories, individual graphic novels, but unfortunately, in terms of actually building the mythos of Wonder Woman, none of them really do that.
And that's a shame. I mean,
the movie is going to have to invent a lot.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's good, because if it's good, then maybe the comics will have kind of an irrefutable foundation to build Wonder Woman on, and maybe the comic will finally gain some traction.
And that's what happened with Batman '89. You had the Dark Knight, you had some of that stuff before, but that really cemented what Batman is. I mean, heck, I like, I like, the old school Batman, the whole, the Bat-Tootsie and everything else. I was like cool with that. I watched a lot of this old stuff when I was a kid.
People don't even understand. It's funny. People bash the shit out of Adam West Batman. They're like, oh, it's just campy. It's like, guys, you don't even understand. Batman, the 60s Batman is like the most faithful adaptation of 60s Batman comics fucking imaginable.
Oh yeah.
Like, if you read Batman comics from the 50s and 60s, that is the comic.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. And that was I loved it when I was a kid. And then you had, the change from, you had the dark, Frank Miller, then you had Batman 89, then you had Batman the Animated Series. I still say that is probably the best DC and just DC comics animated show ever. It had its flaws, but dang, that show was really good. Followed by Superman the Animated Series, which was actually really good too.
It was.
And Mask of the Phantasms. Then you had, which I am so pissed off no one saw. I'm like, damn.
Yeah, unfortunately. I remember Roger Ebert in one of his rare moments of lucidity He gave it a review right when it came out, saying, this is the version of Batman that has this is the definitive version of Batman. When Mask of the Phantasm came out, he gave it a rave review and was like, if we could have a live action movie that's like this, that's Batman. Yeah. So it's not like it was badly received. It was just nobody really went to see it.
Yeah, then you have Justice League and all this stuff. Then you had the Batman video games, which was successful until Arkham Knight happened, basically for the PC version, which actually on Steam it costs like $10, and I'm like, should I risk it?
Still overpriced. Yeah, still overpriced.
I have a new graphics card. I'm like, should I risk it? Should I not?
Oh, it's a beautiful game. I'll say that much. It's a beautiful game.
Yeah, it is. But it's just like, oh gosh, they had to drag out the Joker chestnut again. And like, I'm sorry, but I like Joker. I think he's great, but there's other villains. Honestly, Joker to me is not really Batman's arch nemesis if you really think about it.
I completely agree. I've always argued that Joker is one of the weaker Batman villains if you judge it from like a psychological perspective. Because Batman's rogues gallery is good precisely because the people who made a lot of these villains, and it wasn't Bob Kane and it wasn't Bill Finger. It was later writers who came along and established a lot of this rogues gallery. But like the really good Batman villains who came later and were given a solid, psychological motivation. A lot of that happened on Batman the Animated Series too, with like the reinvention of Mr. Freeze.
Mm-hmm.
They're characters who were presented with a similar circumstance to Bruce Wayne. And instead of deciding to serve humanity in the aftermath, they decide they're going to turn to a life of crime and get even, or they're going to get revenge instead. They're going to turn vigilante. And those are the best characters. Those are the characters that connect the most and you can do the most with in a story sense. That's why the proof is in the pudding with Joker. Over and over again, how many times have they reinvented the Joker's origin? How many times have they had to retell it? Is there even an established Joker origin? Killing Joke isn't it, because it's not even technically canon in terms of his actual origin.
No.
So it's, Joker is constantly reinventing the guy. And I think that's a product of the weakness of the character in terms of his actual connection psychologically to Batman.
Yeah, I honestly think Ra's al Ghul is much more of his main villain. He's basically the same type of way, but he's a killer. He has all this money and power himself. And you have all this.
You're right. He is kind of the polar opposite.
Prometheus.
Bruce Wayne in a lot of ways. He's like the reversed philanthropist.
Yeah,
and he argues his points well. Denny O'Neil kind of established that tradition of having villains where it's like you can kind of see where they're coming from.
Oh yeah.
Those are the best Batman villains, period. With Joker, what you really have to do is just keep him mysterious all the time. And you never really know what he's going to do. And then he kind of works. You look at what Nolan did with him in The Dark Knight. And the reason that's so exceptional is because you can never quite pin down the Joker. And here's why. Because if you pin down the Joker, then you kind of realize, oh, he's kind of shit.
Exactly.
Like his motivations kind of suck. It's not really a strong subject matter.
Oh yeah, and another thing about Ra's al Ghul, and I honestly wish if DC ever has something like where they actually had a good idea, I would think that his backstory would actually be a good film, or maybe something like a real good tragic backstory if they actually really did it. Something like that would be really good instead of this whole this mess of a DC franchise. Maybe they'll do it like after a couple years and such, where this whole thing,
they did a pretty good job in Batman Begins.
Yeah,
but again, you didn't get his origin. You just got kind of a nebulous, I'm the leader of the League of Shadows, and we have kind of this motivation, and I have this philosophy, And
then he returns.
He was Liam Neeson. He did a good job. It was just there wasn't much to work with.
And then he returns as a hallucination, giving him plot details in The Dark Knight Rises, which is... I'm like, wow. And even still, they had to and the best thing about Dark Knight Rises is that you could see him rise not just once, but also twice, because they had him get back for Batman when he broke his leg, Yeah, and then he had that whole little machine that brought him back, walking normal again.
Yeah, which is ridiculous. You had that machine the whole time. Why were you walking around with a cane, jackass? If you had a machine that could fix your leg, why are you... What the fuck? You've been moping for 3 years? Instead,
moping.
What the fuck?
Yeah, moping, shooting arrows in his house, and just basically being this whole...
Sobbing and waiting for fucking Anne Hathaway to come along and be a shitty actress? Like, what the shit?
Yeah, that would it took someone like that to wake him up. And then after he gets his ass kicked by Bane, he becomes Batman again and somehow after getting out of the whole pit, somehow finds a way to get back to Gotham. Which I'm like, how? He has no money.
Yeah.
What? And people say this was a crime. I'm like, wait. And I loved when that happened. People pointed out, you know what they did? All those Bat fanboys went out and they went crazy.
My favorite thing about that movie, about the pit, is that for some reason they have the television on that's tuned into the 24-hour Gotham News Network. Like, what? Wow, the pit's kind of shit. Everybody's talking about how it's this horrible thing, and yet it's cable ready. They've got basic cable. Fantastic. Great. And they're perpetually logged into American TV stations. That's interesting.
Oh, great. Yes. Yeah. BuzzFeed will call that as a privilege, by the way.
Those movies are so rife with plot holes. It's
ridiculous. Oh gosh. I love The Dark Knight. I think that was really good, but
it's rife with plot holes too.
Yeah.
Like in Dark Knight, my favorite thing in that movie is where he jumps, he's on the little yacht with his models, and he swims into the lake or whatever the fuck they're on, and jumps onto that plane, and then goes to Hong Kong to be Batman and go kidnap the bank guy, the guy who's the bank for all the mobsters. Batman kidnaps the bank guy, then they do the skyhook thing, and he gets pulled out. And then the next day, they on the news report says, and this bank guy, the Hong Kong dude, was apprehended by Wayne Tech. So the models on the yacht know that Bruce Wayne is Batman. The Skyhook pilot knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman. And the news knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman.
God damn. Wow, and it's just, that is to me the most, that was like, at this point, Batman must have like some type of weird magic thing that just he sprinkles around like, nope, I'm not him.
I know, he's got to have Jedi mind powers.
Well,
this
then
is
again,
not the Batman you're looking for.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me. And speaking of stuff that is not surprising anymore, and all the stuff, I had to get this in before we close off. The most craziest thing out there is, well, someone said we actually elected a Batman villain in the presidency and such. Donald Trump. I'm going to say this right now as someone who did vote voted in election day. I did not vote for Trump. I did not vote for Hillary either. I voted for Gary Johnson, the guy with no eyebrows. I don't know what happened to them.
What's an eyebrow?
Yes. He must have smoked it. She must have smoked it all up. But and then again, after my vote and everything else in my early election, and I looked in the feed and everyone else blaming the third parties as usual, which I knew.
Bullshit. Come on, the third parties would have been such a non-issue if Hillary wasn't a ripe, steaming turd to begin with. There wouldn't have been any third-party vote if she wasn't a hot mess.
Oh, I wonder what would have happened. All the people who are the ones who are pro-Hillary, like, oh, that's a woman in the White House. Somehow, by some miracle way, Dr. Joe Stein somehow won. I wonder how they would have reacted.
No shit.
They'd be like, oh, that's...
They would have had fucking kittens.
And they were like,
me.
"Oh God!"
How about that recount effort, huh, Dr. Stein?
Lord.
That blew up in her fucking. I almost suspect I think some of the conspiracy theorists were right. I almost suspect Jill Stein did that just to fuck with Hillary one last time. Like, oh, here's the recount coming. They're gonna overturn the election, and then Trump winds up gaining votes.
And I honestly think that was basically because she was trying to get some people on the left get some love back. Like because everyone was just slamming her and Gary Johnson. And they're like, this is my way to get some love back. And everybody's like, oh, this might have something. We might have something. Nope, we didn't. In fact, he gained votes.
Worked out so well.
and gained votes. And I'm like, damn, this is like, I mean, I didn't think it was actually possible to actually screw up that mightily. But then again, I looked at the whole Democratic Party and stuff. Other than when Hillary was running, other than when she had President Obama at the time or any other person that was high up on the left and everything, she didn't have any people drawing to her crowds.
No.
In fact, I think even Gary Johnson at one point actually outdrew her.
Well, they were constantly doing dirty tricks to make it seem like there were more people at her rallies than there actually were. Like they did little things like the one time where she was able to draw a crowd in the tens of thousands, or it was like 15,000 people, is the most she ever drew. I don't even think it was quite 15,000. I think they actually overestimated. Someone used like software. They actually got an aerial photo and they used software to count each head. And it turned out to be like 1,100 or something. But anyway, CNN, this just happened to be the only Hillary rally that CNN had covered. So it seemed a little too convenient.
Yeah, and then
they covered Donald Trump and Hillary the same day, their rallies. And they took a picture before everyone had shown up of the Trump rally. And so they said, oh, look, the half-empty arena. And then somebody later who was actually at the rally took a picture and showed the full thing. It was sold out. The whole fucking building.
Oh, yeah, I mean, they were selling out every place. In fact, even the places he was down, he sold out.
It gets even better, dude. So a rally where she supposedly drew 1,500 people, which was actually 1,100. People started tweeting. Democrats started tweeting. They were like, okay, I get it. I'm already going. Stop reminding me. And this hashtag started turning up. Students, this speech took place at a university in Florida. Students were apparently getting extra credit from their professors to go to the rally.
Damn, that is...
And
wow.
They could only draw 1,100 people with that.
Good Lord. The people like, you know what? I have a failing grade, but I'll take that L. Didn't they go to see Hillary? I'm like, that's bad. They would rather take that. And then in the most perfect way, these people, the same students who probably went to it, are probably the same ones who were protesting and doing all the craziest stuff that's going on right now. And I sat there and laughed. I'd never had a big laugh before. I'm like, no, but I don't have big laughs and stuff. But when I saw like all these protests, and then I saw that little figure, like all those protesters, over 70% of them didn't go out to vote, but none of them actually registered. I just
well, because a lot of them are hired. I mean, I remember. Look, this is propaganda 101. Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda minister for the Nazi Party, kind of the architect of modern propaganda in a lot of ways. One of the things he did, I remember. I'm a big World War I buff. When the Nazi Party had taken control in Germany, one of their first orders of business was to strongly persecute anyone who had anything negative to say about the German side in World War I. And for some reason, the book and movie All Quiet on the Western Front?
Yep.
The writer of that, Eric Marie Remarque, he had written that book, and it honestly, you read it, and it's not negative toward the German side. It just unflinchingly depicts how hard it was in the trenches, which is, goddamn, if you're a German patriot, to me, that shows the struggle that they went through. To me, that's a good thing. Yeah. That's a positive depiction of your race and your country. But apparently the Nazis thought otherwise. They thought it was like demoralizing the German people. So Goebbels wanted to turn public sentiment against All Quiet on the Western Front. So shortly after the book came out, they did a movie adaptation and they tried to release it in Germany. And so what Goebbels did was he hired protesters to go into the theaters and start screaming at the screen and causing a ruckus. And it turned into a riot and violence happened. And they did this at several movie theaters, and they made sure, you know, the cameras were there. They always caught it, and it was always going to be reported in the papers. It's a classic propaganda tactic. George Soros, rather ironic that George Soros was a Nazi collaborator in his youth, but George Soros is hiring a lot of these protesters to go out there and crack skulls and create these riots. It's absolute astroturf.
Oh yeah, and it's a bit funny about, you know, the whole people are saying, and I will say this about the whole Berkeley stuff. I kind of laugh about it because they say, "Oh, we shut down." I'm like, you do realize the whole thing about the Streisand effect, right? Because once you once you shut down that speech, guess what? Not only did he get a bigger platform, his book is now a #1 seller.
No shit. And he's being talked about in national media. They're doing specials on him on Fox News and CNN. Now he's a national figure. If he wasn't before, he is now.
Congratulations.
By the way, this is all after Twitter shut down his account. And everybody was like, oh, goddamn, after his Twitter account shut down, Milo will be done because that's how he created his grassroots movement. How did that work out, Twitter?
Yeah.
God damn. And it kind of shows how irrelevant Twitter is becoming, honestly.
Oh yeah, and it's coming like this big feud war. And yeah, you have other places, you know. And again, it's let me see this YouTuber, Sean James, you know, really cool dude. He actually said this, you know, he reminds us, like, you know, if you get all this other stuff, like all this stuff that pisses you off, and there's this, like, he said, you know, there's this red X on the Google Chrome or Firefox. You can click that. You don't need to do that no more. You don't have to pay attention to that anymore. And yet we see that we have become this huge sterile environment in the social media, because the internet used to be, used to have a lot more information in it. Now it's more sterilized, which I do agree with. It's this huge sterilization of people trying to sterilize speech and such. This whole type of
not a winning issue. If you want to win the youth over, that is not how you do it. And more than anything, this past election was about how out of touch with the youth the left are.
Oh God,
They're
yes.
So out of you are not winning the youth by acting like the free speech school marm. You know, nobody likes the nun in Catholic school who's going to wrap your knuckles with a ruler if you say a naughty word. And that's basically what Democrats are doing with you can't say anything that they might construe as homophobic. And what they construe as homophobic becomes more and more cartoonish by the day. Just calling someone who is gay is now considered homophobic. What? Yeah. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Or the 10,000 pronouns you have to do. Like, for example, in Canada, which is, and Rick, I gotta say this, the professor, is it Justin Peterson? That dude, because that man, who was probably going to like I said, was going to lose his job and such. He had all these, people like, oh, you could just be quiet and just say those pronouns. Like, no, this is wrong. Why you have to do all these type of pronouns, Z or Z, this? I'm like, what's happened?
Look, it's funny because it always baffles me how the very same people on the left who are way into science when it comes to like climate change.
Yes,
climate change. Science is inviolable when it comes to climate change. You may not question it or even suggest that it might be biased in some way and through some institutional context, which however you come down on that issue, you can't even question it, which I always innately have a problem with. Whenever you're just told that you can't even ask the question, to me, you're shutting down dissent and there's something already sketchy about your argument.
Oh yeah, and that's even worse when you have someone like say, you're like, oh, don't talk about, like, you can't talk about it, you can't think
Yeah,
about it,
and
you
it's
can't.
the left that consider science inviolable when it comes to climate change. Suddenly, they whirl around on the transgender issue. In 200 years of genetic science, we have yet to find a gene that determines that you are actually indefatigably born this way, quote unquote. There's no gay gene. There's no transgender gene. It doesn't exist. It does not exist. But they don't want to fucking hear it. They don't want to fucking hear it. That doesn't mean that people who are transgender or gay are broken. It doesn't mean they're fucked up. It doesn't mean we should persecute them. It just means that in all likelihood, it had something to do with your childhood. Doesn't mean you're fucked up. We're fine with it. No one's going to persecute you. Just saying, look, if I grow up and somebody fucking puts me in a burlap sack and beats me with reeds every day, I'm probably going to grow up a little jittery with a few issues. If someone feeds me a slice of cake every single time I say the word boobs, when I grow up, I bet I'm going to say the word boobs a lot. However you're conditioned as a child affects who you turn out to be.
Yes.
Doesn't mean that person is fucked up. Whoever you turn into is fucked up. It just means, it's a product of your childhood environment. So if we can't even ask the question, I'm not saying that's absolutely the way that it is, because I'm not on the left, but I am saying we should at least be able to ask the goddamn question.
Yes, and honestly, I actually started to, as I was once upon a time was on the left. When I was like in 2000, and like I was actually one of the people who voted for President Obama. I was great, and then around 2011, when he was doing the whole NSA, the whole big wiretap and stuff, and then the bombing and everything, I was like, I just can't really be with that. And yet the left were they were quiet as I don't know what. The anti-war left was silent. In fact, let me just say that there were some people who were still protesting. There were some, but they weren't the big ones when President Bush was around. They shut down. They were like shutting down like blocks and such. Then
no, it's hilarious. And I think that's what you're seeing now. It's a combination of George Soros and other organizations astroturfing, literally paying people to stir shit up. And I think it's another combination of, since 2004 and the hate Bush rallies and the anti-Iraq war protests and Fahrenheit 9/11 and that whole thing, the left has just become this protest culture. It's all they know how to do. They don't want to debate. They don't want to discuss ideas. They just want to march and feel like it's the 60s again.
I think Penn and Teller actually talked about this. It's these protests. I remember there was actually an episode of Penn and Teller bullshit. They were saying the marches, they're not doing good. It's about feeling good. It's a huge high for them. And it's funny about all these people who didn't vote. You know what? Maybe it's just me and you probably, do you vote like in local elections as such? Because I do. And
yeah, I do.
And you want to just really be sad and depressed. Just ask around about how many people the local elections, how many people who are your age or younger actually go up there.
No.
And the answer is there's none of them that are there. They don't vote in the school board.
If you want to know why politicians spend so much time at nursing homes and shit when they're campaigning, it's because the only reliable voters for those kind of local elections are old people, because they have nothing else to do with their time.
Yeah.
They vote like clockwork. And they also, a lot of them are on Social Security. They want to make sure they're always going to have Social Security. They want to make sure they're going to have welfare if they're on it. They want to make sure their government programs are intact. So old people, man, if you want to get elected, just go for those old people.
Yeah, and don't screw with them. Never screw the old people, because they will vote against you.
It's true. And that, by the way, I think a big thing that fucked Hillary over, and a thing that no one seems to be calling her out for, is that shit about putting coal miners out of business. Because once you start talking about things like that, then the older people are turning against you.
Oh, and by the way, people just went not really reported, but I saw this and I I saw it on Facebook. I fact checked and all this stuff. There was like 100,000 Democratic voters switched parties to Republican over in Pennsylvania. I'm like, you know what, Trump is going to win Pennsylvania. People didn't believe me. Like, and then when it came up on election night, when it was the votes kept tallying up, it's just like starting to shift.
I was skeptical. I thought all the other Rust Belt states would turn Trump. I really did. And they did. They pretty much did right across the board. But I wasn't quite sure about Pennsylvania because Pennsylvania is a swing state, but I've always felt like Pennsylvania is a little more blue than red. You know, it's a swing state. It can go either way, and sometimes it'll go Republican, but on the whole, it feels like it skews a little more Democrat. But man, when you have a figure like Trump, who is so nationally renowned, and this is one of the reasons the media couldn't take him down, because Trump was bigger than the media before he ever ran for president. The Trump brand is bigger than the media. The Trump brand is bigger than than Democrats or Republicans. The Trump brand is bigger than the president.
Pretty much. It is. It's a downgrade for him if you really think about it. It's a downgrade for Trump to be president, if you want to be real.
It is. He gets paid less. He gets more shit on a daily basis. That's why I laughed when people were like, oh, he's not going to be, he's going to drop out. He's not going to wind up doing it. It's like, why? Because he accrues so much benefit from this. Like he gets nothing but shit for being president.
That's what the good thing about politics is and such is like he gets completely and utterly, you will get crapped on, you'll be pissed on, crapped on until basically you're really old or you're really dead. That's pretty much how it goes in the world of politics.
Unless you're Strom Thurmond, then they'll keep running your corpse long after you're fucking dead.
Yeah, unless you're that. Oh, then again, it is interesting to see what Trump and all this stuff. And it was basically this huge thing with the race about Donald Trump. Oh, there's gonna be racist and everything. But the people who he's a sexist and a racist. But the main people that came out for him when the voting, when the dust settled, he got more black votes than John McCain and Mitt Romney.
He got more Latino
votes. And he got more women, and it was the white women vote that voted him in. I'm like, I was just in shock. I thought that would basically, he was going to win. It would be basically nothing but white men, but it was a shock. It was a shock.
I called that pretty early because he's such a multimedia figure, number one. There's a huge chunk of like uninformed voters. I do agree in the sense that I think uninformed voters did help, but not because they're uninformed. Just because, God, this is terrifying, but it's true. There's an awful lot of people who don't know a fucking thing about politics. And so whenever an election comes along, what they do is they go into the booth and they look at the ballot and they pull the lever for whichever name they recognize.
Oh, yes.
And like I said, Trump is objectively a bigger brand than Clinton.
And even worse, the same people who are uninformed probably don't even know about the three branches or any type of local governments. And
there are people out there who voted in this election who think the president is the king of America. You know what I mean?
Yes, and that's terrifying. People say, "Oh, we should just go with the problem." Are you insane? I don't want the popular vote. I don't want that because I understand that the local elections do have popular vote, but I am just, it's terrifying me because I want an informed electorate. I mean, we have cell phones. We're on the internet right now. You could be informed right now, people.
Yeah.
But
and that part is a little off-putting, but I think the main reason you want to keep the Electoral College is because look, this country was founded as a collection of states. That's what it is. It was a collection, it was Virginia banding together with Pennsylvania, banding together with, it was a collective of states. It was not a collective of people. That's very important to note. That's why the founding fathers set up the Electoral College system, because they weren't particularly interested in what the majority of the people wanted. They were interested in what the majority of states wanted. So that's who's electing the president. It's not the majority of people. It's the majority of states. And that's a fundamental. If you're not cool with that, like if you're someone who's just like, fuck that, it should be majority rule, frankly, you shouldn't be in this country because that is what this country was founded on. That's what it's been from the very beginning. That's the whole idea behind this country. And it's arguably the reason this country's been so successful over such a short period of time.
Franklin once said it was like what we government has a republic if you can keep it, and we have been honestly, if you look at the whole range of what governments and the governments we have for the last couple of years, it's been, I think we've been losing. I mean, when you look at what's Snowden went basically with the NSA, the way we had the war on drugs and everything like that, and how we've treated shoot, being black to other people in the country, it's been like shit for for a while. Police brutality and such, all that type of stuff. Which, by the way, I'm gonna say this right now: Trump is not gonna really help in that regard. I don't think he is. I think personally, I really wish if he was gonna do something great, he would actually be turning that thing down, the whole militarization, which started under Clinton, by the way, with all the whole 3 strikes rule too, which people seem to forget about that too, the whole jailing and everything else. And then meanwhile, President Clinton said,
here's why I don't see it happening. And this has a lot to do with media. Let's be real. Michael Brown's should have been a local story.
Oh, yeah.
It should have been like, oh, shit, this dude got shot and whatever. And we'll see what the findings are and whatever. But the problem was the media was like,
oh, look,
we're going to focus on this because it can help us push a narrative. I mean, that's
and ratings and more money. And I sit and I'm like, I saw, they used the family members and everything like props. Again, yes. Like, it's props.
Absolutely. If I was Michael Brown's family, I'd be pissed at the media. And actually, a number of Michael Brown's family have come out and said, fuck the media.
Yeah,
because they have been used. They have absolutely been manipulated by the media. That whole thing where the one relative, the uncle or whatever, was shouting, burn it down, which, look, he's pissed off. A family member got shot. I can understand in the moment, but, the media sees that and they turn it into a national story. Once again, this is
like, oh, goodness, this is ratings. It bleeds, it leads. Same thing. All these. I mean,
and that's the thing. It should have been a local story. I'll just go back to that. It should have been a local story. It was a tragedy. Look, the officer didn't want to fucking shoot the guy, but it's a tragedy all around. It should have been a local story. At most they should have interviewed the cop, asked him what was going on, and then they should have had the investigation and then be done with it. Whatever the findings were, they would be the findings. And then Ferguson wouldn't have been torched. The new Black Panthers wouldn't have been coming into town smuggling in dirty bombs and shit.
And then and the funny thing is, you had the store owners and such. By the way, there were actual black store owners with the guns too, protecting their land too. Which I love the fact the media didn't talk about that.
Oh no, they didn't. They
don't talk about that.
And they didn't talk about how the Black Panthers were firing on firefighters that were trying to put out the fires in the town. Firefighters were showing up. Everyone was like, "What are the firefighters running away?" Because people are shooting at them.
Yes.
That's why your town got burned down. You wouldn't let the firefighters do their job.
It is, and it's frustrating because there's anger there. There's all this type of stuff, and yeah, I'll say that there's racist stuff in the police. Oh, I'll be glad to say that, and I think there is some racial elements there. I've seen the laws too, especially the whole war on drugs, and all the type of stuff to basically stop a person with having a bit of weed and have them locked up for like 15, 20 years with a non-violent crime and destroy their entire lives, which is, again, thank you very much, Bill Clinton, for setting that stupid shit up. I know, I'm not, you can tell I'm so happy about that. And people, again, don't talk me. Just look at the 13th documentary on Netflix. Really, I mean, it showed that, and I'm like, why would any black person want to vote for Clinton after that? I'm like, I couldn't vote for anyone who actually started the whole new version of Jim Crow. And it pissed me off. And I saw this interview, and I re-saw this interview multiple times about Bill Clinton. He said, I really wish I had the power. Like, this is like his waning years of presidency. Same thing with President Obama, too. It's like, in the waning years, like, maybe I should have done more I wish I had the power to do something about this whole marijuana and such. See, maybe not be, marijuana's not really that much of a dangerous drug. I'm like, you serious, man? If only you had a bit of power. What power you had? Oh yeah, you could have run an executive order to take it down from tier 1 drug, but you didn't. Yeah. And yet, it's just. And same thing with President Obama, who, I love how, and I gonna probably get shit on this, but I don't care. Is is that he was like, oh, I did like weed and I did a little bit of blow, but I'm cool like that. But yet, really, say you did that. If like myself or you or anyone else, if I did a little bit of blow or weed, I'll probably be locked up for 10 to 15 years. Probably never see my family or friends again. When I do get out, I'll probably have a chance to get a job or anything else like that. So again, you might do a little weed and blow, but yet someone who's been in that same position as you wouldn't, and everything else, you wouldn't. You wouldn't have been president or anything else like that. It pisses me off that these people in power could do these type of hedonistic things, and yet they will turn around and point to the finger at the lowest part, the lowest people, the black people, the Latinos, all this other stuff, who are getting fucked over by this law, and say, well, you're the ones who are a problem, while meanwhile they can go and smoke and do all this type of illegal shit. I'm sorry, I gotta get get out of my chest. You're not the only one who does rants, baby.
I know, right?
Oh gosh, wow. Well, that was. I had, but you know what? I need to end this thing on something positive, because that right there was pretty much of a big old negative truth bomb. Let's see what one thing positive ending we could actually talk about that actually was something that people will want to really unite, because the world needs to be uniting. What is one thing that can actually unite us and something that will say that, you know what, the world isn't too terrible?
Laughing at Brock Lesnar when he loses in less than 5 minutes.
Yes, that's one thing, baby.
You drug test failing, giant baby head having, fucking beat red bitch. Anyway.
Yes. Oh gosh, the myth of Brock Lesnar. Screw him. But you know what? I think we should end on that note. So thank you for that, ladies and gentlemen. I pissed off probably everyone from Smarks to Democrats to Republicans to pretty much Square Enix fans, Final Fantasy fans, and who else we pissed? Oh yeah, Witcher fans too. So yeah, and I'll probably thank you very much for listening. My subscriber count will probably be down to 0 at this point. So thanks very much, Razorfist, for being on here.
No problem. I'm glad to do it.
All right, man. It's Dukect here. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week with my negative 50,000 subscribers. And I'll see y'all next time. Peace.
Godspeed.